U.S. military, in no uncertain terms, is ready to back up all the negotiations that are taking place right now. We're talking EA-18G Growlers ready to jam frequencies, could be jamming frequencies right now. E-2D Hawkeyes on station, running radar coverage over the Persian Gulf, and MQ-9 Reapers running near constant surveillance passes over the Strait of Hormuz, watching every ship, every convoy, every move Iran makes. This is not a peacetime patrol necessarily. This is the trust but verify patrol. American combat air power is parked over Iran's shoulder while its diplomats sit in Switzerland and tell the world that they gave up nothing. Iran's chief negotiator just said this publicly on record, that the Strait of Hormuz will, quote, never return to its pre-war conditions. Are we kind of seeing the trend with Iran at this point? Anybody getting bad memories of that bad X? Iran's foreign ministry said there were zero plans for IAEA nuclear inspectors to enter the country, and Iran state media called the entire deal a U.S. defeat. Yeah, your Navy's at the bottom of the ocean, your ballistic missile bunkers are basically all blown up. But yeah, you've defeated the US, of course. Here's what's actually happening on the water, though. Ships are crossing through the Strait of Hormuz, and that has tripled in 1 week. Sanctions have been waived to allow Iran to get food to their people because the situation is so dire. Iran's negotiators are coming to Switzerland for the negotiations. The IAEA chief said from Japan this morning that inspections are going to happen. Quote, this is going to happen. So which is it? Is Iran winning, or are the Mullahs negotiating with two U.S. carrier strike groups parked on their doorstep just saying, hey, you guys doing okay in there? Here's what President Trump said on Truth Social. He said, Iran has informed the U.S. that despite troublemaking fake news reporting to the contrary, there are no tolls, no insurance costs, and no other charges of any kind being sought or received by Iran on ships traveling the Strait of Hormuz. If this is false information, negotiations would end immediately. Additionally, no money has been given to Iran or released from their money to them. But the U.S. will be releasing some of their money that is totally controlled by us to our farmers and ranchers for the purchase of corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. Food is desperately needed in Iran, and we will be purchasing it for them exclusively from the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So as you can see, Iran brought to the table in no uncertain terms. And now both sides are kind of declaring victory, right? Iran is saying they're winning. The U.S. is pretty clearly showing that Iran is not winning, that they're coming to the table. And I get it. Right now, everyone's a little bit confused. The Strait of Hormuz has had issues. The headlines are shifting fast. What do we actually believe? But here's what gets missed. A ceasefire isn't the end of the story. This is the beginning, the negotiation, the off-ramps. This is something that Sun Tzu has talked about for thousands of years. You guys know my boy, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. He's basically said you strike, you pull back, and you give the enemy the opportunity for an off-ramp. And the one thing that really stands out to me is that the command structure that drove every decision in Iran made throughout this war, who was actually calling the shots? Well, obviously the administration in the US, the IRGC in Iran, but what was happening between the lines? Why did Iran keep launching missiles, and why were they getting hit by weapons basically up to the very last second? Well, I spent years involved planning for this war itself. I have an idea of what actually happened beneath it all and the gray areas of warfare. And here's the interesting thing. The gray areas of warfare, the things between the lines, you can actually learn from those and apply it to your own life. Break down the gap between what is being said in the corporate media, what we're hearing out of the IRGC, and what's happening at the negotiation table that's backed up by military hardware that's likely to keep the mullahs strangled and keep them understanding that they have to come to the table with something meaningful. Let's start with the two-carrier posture. So right now in the CENTCOM area of operations, there are two carriers. There were three, but the USS Ford went home. But the current posture tells you something important about how Washington is reading this deal. At the peak of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. had those three aircraft carriers in the Middle East simultaneously, which is just wild. Over 200 aircraft, 15,000 sailors and Marines. The last time that happened was in 2003, to put that in perspective. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper told this in Armed Services Committee that U.S. and partner forces intercepted more than 6,000 Iranian one-way attack drones and 1,500 ballistic missiles during Epic Fury alone. The Ford came home to Norfolk on May 17th after a record-breaking 320-day deployment, the longest carrier deployment since the Vietnam War. Just wild. The ship and the crew earned it. They deserved a little vacation at this point. The U.S. sent the Ford home after the ceasefire held and kept two carriers on station afterwards. They didn't send the other two home. The USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS H.W. Bush are both still in the Arabian Sea right now. CENTCOM just posted that photo of the Bush underway with the caption, "Two aircraft carriers carriers continue to operate in the Middle East as U.S. forces remain present and vigilant. This is a deliberate, measured signal that's happening. You guys see that, right? We pulled one carrier home, kept two in the region. The blockade architecture is essentially still intact, and the blockade could start at any point if Iran breaks any of the memorandum of understanding or really doesn't come to the table in good faith. The United States doesn't need to rebuild its force posture because it's already there. And on those decks, you've got F-15Es, which are the single-seat F-18s, and then F-18Fs, which are the striker F-18s that have two people in them, a Rio in the back and a fighter pilot in the front. This is the primary strike fighter that's operating right now. There's still sorties going on right now. Combat air patrols to make sure the Strait of Hormuz stays open and Iran doesn't target any of its Gulf neighbors during these negotiations, because we know Iran's like that angry child that gets mad at something and they're like, we're angry, we're going to launch 1,000 attack drones at neighborhoods and our Gulf partners. It's like, really, guys? Can you guys just say you're angry and then try to negotiate better instead of blasting off ballistic missiles and one-way attack drones? Well, enter the F-18F and different assets in the area that are ready to strike down these different drones if they target commercial shipping or do something else because they get a little frustrated, because we know they've kind of become the redheaded stepchild of the Middle East. But remember, you've got EA-18G Growlers, the electronic warfare variant of the Super Hornet. The Growler's job is to suppress enemy radar, jam communications, and blind Iran's air defense network before a strike package goes in, or just jam their communications network right now. Let's say there's some nefarious dudes. Imagine that. Nefarious guys in the IRGC Navy. No, we didn't expect that one at all. Well, let's say they're communicating with each other about how to target a specific cargo ship. Well, enter the EA-18G Growler that can jam those communications and keep them from ever being able to coordinate on how to swarm that ship. The electronic attack layer is on station and ready to go with the EA-18G, but it's backed up by the E-2 Advanced Hawkeye. That's the carrier's eyes in the sky. The Hawkeye is an airborne early warning and command aircraft running radar coverage over massive swaths of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. It can track every aircraft, every surface vessel, every anomaly. Oh, weird. We just saw a few fast attack craft leave from the Ayatollah's vacation house. Yeah, I'm sure they're just out on a midnight cruise. Yeah. I'm sure they're just out sightseeing, doing some whale watching. So just watching and waiting and making sure they're not harassing commercial ships. This thing sees everything. It directs traffic. While the diplomats talk in Switzerland, all this hard power has never been more important. But here's where it gets interesting. Their surveillance architecture over the Strait of Hormuz, it isn't just manned aircraft. There's no confirmed reports of SHIELD AI's XBAT being there, but I want to talk about it because this would be perfect for this theater, and in my opinion, it will be used in a lot of theaters moving forward. Cuba is just like, somebody in Cuba's government was like sipping their coffee and they heard me say that and just spilled coffee all over themselves. They're like, we don't know why, we just felt a shiver roll up our spine. But I'm going to talk about the AI XBAT. SHIELD AI builds this thing. It's a shipboard or a land board, if you will, launched vertical takeoff autonomous surveillance drone that could be operationally deployed on U.S. Navy and Coast Guard assets throughout this conflict. We don't know if it's actually been there. There's no confirmed reports, but this thing can operate in communications jammed environments. Iran can't try to blind it with any of their electronic warfare. It just keeps going. This thing is designed to counter electronic warfare attacks. The XBAT's job right now could be persistent ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance over the Strait of Hormuz, watching that ship traffic. And remember, Iran has been able to shoot down MQ-9s, even reports of them taking down RQ-4 Global Hawks. So something more stealthy, more able to not get shot down or get electronically spotted or radar spotted. SHIELD AI XBAT is basically perfect for that. Basically, this thing is confirming Iran's compliance with the deal, watching for any sign that Iran is moving its uranium stockpiles to undeclared locations, because remember, right now they're saying that no IAEA inspectors will come into the country. So are they doing that so that they can move that enriched uranium? Well, they're not going to do it without being spotted, because remember, space satellites watching, waiting, confirming, and then also team that up with these advanced drones, and Iran really has nowhere to hide, and you can track exactly where they could be moving that uranium to. So SHIELD's AI XBAT, fully autonomous stealth VTOL fighter, and it's powered by the HiveMind AI system that's designed to operate off of ships, remote islands, from anywhere without a runway. Basically, you crack open a crate, you've got a whole bunch of coffee in one crate, and you crack open this crate, and it's an advanced stealth eVTOL drone. Yeah, that's going to make your cup of coffee taste a lot better. But think of 3 XBATs fitting on the deck of where one legacy fighter could fit at a fraction of the cost of a conventional jet. This is the platform that I think the U.S. military is building to make make persistent autonomous deterrence permanent and scalable, because this thing can also work with fighter jets. But here's something else that Iran is saying that is very interesting. They said that the trip to Switzerland was, quote, a direct continuation of the battlefield. That's the framing Tehran is selling domestically. And they went to Switzerland and won. That's what they're telling everyone, right? Because they need to show people in their country that they're strong and they're still in power so they don't get overthrown. Right? The country is just ready to overthrow these guys, these mullahs that have basically murdered people for 47 years. They're ready to rock, but they don't have any weapons, they don't have any training, and the IRGC basically has a stranglehold on the country. And the way that they keep that is continuously gaslighting their people and pressuring their people. They said, we have not had a meeting with the IAEA Director General, and we have no plans for the agency to inspect Iran's nuclear facilities damaged by the US and Zionist military aggressors. And then here's the kicker. When the U.S. said that unfrozen Iranian funds would go to American farmers, that the deal would, quote, make American farmers richer, Iran's foreign ministry called it insulting. They said the U.S. destroyed Iranian civilization, and now Trump's big prize is enriching American corn farmers. They're furious, but that's because they're not the ones who are going to benefit. They don't care if all of their people starve, right? They could care less. Honestly, they would probably appreciate that. They want to thin out their people. They just want themselves and, the IRGC, their bodyguards. So they're not going to benefit directly from this, and so they don't see any benefit to it. And that's why their rhetoric is up to level 11, because they want to see what will actually increase their fiefdom, what will actually keep the regime in power. And giving food to their people isn't exactly going to do that, because remember, the IRGC, the mullahs, they've been insulated from a lot of this. They have the stockpiles, they have ways of getting food, they have ways of feeding their family. So the other 90 million people, that's something that they really don't care about, and that's pretty clear from that exact quote, because the US is like, hey, we're actually going to feed your people, and they're not going to starve. And the mullahs are like, really? We're not going to get a bigger palace with a bigger golden crapper? Well, this deal doesn't mean anything to us then. You made it to the Global Roundup, my friends. So today we're talking about CENTCOM. CENTCOM's doing work not just in Iran, but they just targeted a senior ISIS leader in Syria. CENTCOM said that CENTCOM and our partners remain committed to rooting out remaining remnants of ISIS to ensure its enduring defeat. We will continue to defend the U.S. homeland, our service members, and allies and partners across the region. This matters because it's a reminder that even while the U.S. military is managing the largest deterrence posture in the Middle East in over 2 decades, they're also focused on rooting out ISIS, which is one of their areas that they specialize in. So at this point, ISIS can't hide anywhere. Venezuela, ISIS leader struck. Syria, ISIS leader struck. It's just not letting up. Story 2, Ukraine hits Russia's only helium plant, 500 miles plus inside the country, and I'll likely do a full video on this tomorrow because there was some advanced drones used in this attack, and the advanced drones just get better and better and better. So I'll talk about drone warfare tomorrow, but basically sparking Russia's largest helium plant is just massive. And that brings us to the 40 chess strategic analysis section, my friends, because right now the strategic military posture in the region is the negotiation policy. It's the muscle behind the negotiation that actually gets something done. And then remember, Iran's leadership has 2 audiences, the international negotiating table and the Iranian street. So what they say publicly about never surrendering Hormuz, zero IAEA plans, is domestic politics. The Revolutionary Guard Corps hardliners, the clerics, they can't be seen as accepting American terms to their people. So Iran's negotiators go to Switzerland, they make real concessions in the room, and then their foreign ministry spokesperson goes to a press conference and says the exact opposite. It's the performance theater of politics that the mullahs have to do to keep power in Iran. And they are very scared right now of losing power and some sort of an uprising taking place.